What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Here we are with another reaction. In this one, we have how the Netherlands accidentally moved to a 4-day week. I'm very intrigued at this video because a 4-day week sounds absolutely beautiful. Before we dive in, if you guys happen to enjoy, please don't forget to subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Also, if you'd like to support the channel by becoming a member, all you gotta do is hit the join button to receive your exclusive benefits. Let's get right to it.
Earlier this year, Eurostat published data on the average working week across the EU for 2024. Like with most Eurostat releases, no one really noticed, but there was a pretty interesting number in there, 32.1, which is apparently how many hours the average Dutch person works, by far the lowest in the EU, and essentially equivalent to a 4-day week. So in this video, we're going to explain how the Netherlands accidentally moved to a 4-day week, and why it looks like it's working pretty well. Have you ever wondered how much money TLDR makes each year? Or who's funding our journalism? Well, we think transparency is super important. So we answer both questions in our recent video. It's linked in the description. So the first thing to say is that this didn't happen suddenly. Rather, it's the culmination of a long-running trend that apparently started sometime in the mid-80s. Before then, the Dutch were about as likely as anyone else to work part-time, with about 6% of working men and 22% of working women in part-time employment.
But yeah. Well, yeah, I guess that makes sense. 1983, that more so was right. Men were out there full-time jobs. Women were more so taking care of the household. And I don't say that in a disrespectful way if that's how anybody takes it. I feel like nowadays it's more balanced as women are more career oriented. And so now, and in these economies, bro, honestly, households have to have two parents working in a lot of these households. So nowadays, both parents are working, taking care of everything at home, and it's a team. It's a team effort on everything, on every front. It's no, you got this and I got this. We gotta do everything together.
By 1990, this figure had risen to 15% for men and 36% for women, and by 1996 it had risen to 16% for men, the highest figure in the OECD, and 38% for women, behind Sweden and the UK, but well above the OECD average. So what?
I guess I'll say for the US, more full time, but I guess in Dutch, you guys 4-day work week is, we consider that part time, but that would be full time for you guys, right? I don't know.
Happened in the 80s to provoke this shift? Well, broadly speaking, there were two factors at play. First, Dutch unions accepted a reduction in working hours for their membership to cope with the economic downturn that hit Europe in the 70s and early 80s.
Okay.
This wasn't the case in most other European countries, where, generally speaking, unions instead tried to protect as many full-time jobs as they could, even if that meant more redundancies. This was largely because the Dutch economy, and especially Dutch industry, had a particularly rough time in the 70s and early 80s. Quite a lot of this has to do with a phenomenon that's since become known as Dutch disease. In short, the Netherlands began producing and exporting lots of natural gas in the mid-70s, when energy prices were rising worldwide. While this was great news for anyone in the gas industry, it was bad news for anyone employed in basically any other industry. Strong gas exports put upwards pressure on the Dutch currency, the guilder, which made the Netherlands' other exports uncompetitive, leading to widespread bankruptcies and job losses. The Netherlands then suffered a particularly brutal recession in the early 80s, with GDP contracting for 8 consecutive quarters between 1981 and 1983. With exports collapsing and the domestic economy in the doldrums, Dutch unions accepted that they needed to do something drastic. In November 1982, as part of the so-called Wassenaar Agreement with Ruud Lubber's new right-wing government, the unions agreed to both lower wages and accept fewer working hours in order to keep Dutch industry afloat. This worked remarkably well, and in the subsequent economic boom, a lot of the new jobs created were part-time. The second factor was the entrance of women into the Dutch workforce. For a whole load of complicated cultural reasons, women moved into the workforce remarkably late in the Netherlands. But the rise of part-time jobs in the 80s acted as a sort of release valve, allowing women with children or other caring responsibilities to
Yeah.
flood into the labour market. The transformation was pretty astonishing. In the 70s, the female labour participation rate in the Netherlands was less than 30%, the lowest in the OECD. But by the 90s, it had risen to over 50%, well above the OECD average. You get the idea. The Dutch shift to part-time work apparently began in the 80s, with both a
Yeah, and I get it because my wife is a stay-at-home mom and she does an absolutely phenomenal job. And I'm literally like I'm at home all the time. I'm just in my office when I'm working. But when I'm working, she does a phenomenal job of taking care of our son. And but like it can get boring without like that interaction, that adult interaction, that routine that you know you're gonna have. That I understand it can get really boring for her sometimes, and sometimes she just needs to get out the house. Luckily, she's got her mom, she's got her sisters to talk to all the time. So, but yeah, I just like no offense to the kids, we love the kids, but these moms need a break. I got to. These mothers need a break out here. These kids is wearing them out. And I know sometimes we like when we be with the kids and they don't act like that. There's something in their little brains that go crazy for moms. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. When my son's with me, like, and it's just me and him, and we're playing and he's good. But when mom comes in the room, there's like an overwhelming love that he can't contain that goes crazy in his head. And he's just got to have her like, it literally like she can't do anything because he's got to have her full attention, and that just kid that's another thing in how she disciplines or anything, and not we because we don't really do it differently. It's just something that goes off in his head, and he just behaves us a different way than he does. He's more chill with me. He's more like all over her. But so that's just something that I look at too. These mothers just need a break, y'all. So get out into that work force just to get a break.
supply side element, in other words, a rise in part-time job creation after the unions accepted a reduction in working hours, and a demand side element. In other words, there were lots of unemployed but well-educated Dutch women who were ready for part-time work. This seemed to work remarkably well. The Dutch economy boomed throughout the 80s and 90s, with strong GDP growth, low unemployment, and balanced budgets. It was at about this time that economists started talking about the Dutch 1.5 earner model to describe households where one partner worked full-time and the other worked part-time. A consensus quickly developed amongst the Dutch political class that this 1.5 earner model was working pretty well, not least because of its dramatic effect on overall employment. And in the 90s, a series of new laws were passed to make it easier for part-time workers. In 1993, a new law extended the minimum wage, which was previously restricted to those working at least 13 hours a week, to all part-time workers. And in 1994, another law obliged employers to include part-time employees in pension schemes. In 1996, the Dutch Parliament passed the Working Hours Act, which included a provision obligating employers to consider the care duties of employees, essentially making it easier for full-time employees to move to part-time work. And in 2000, they passed the Part-Time Employment Act as part of the Framework Work and Care Act, which gave employees the right to change their working hours. Finally, this was updated in 2016 by the Flexible Working Act, which gives employees the right to adjust not just their hours, but also when and where they work. This legislation turbocharged the pre-existing trend towards part-time employment.
That is insane, bro. All of that sounds absolutely incredible. And it's something that works. It's not like they're just like, we just doing this because we don't want to work. No, that's something that has had their economy booming for that all those years in a row. Something that worked in the households. It was a win-win all around the economy, families, everybody's winning. That and so more laws got passed to protect more part-time workers, and I think that's an absolutely beautiful thing. If you ask me, you have less people out here getting burnt out, but still getting to go to work, get out of that house, get out of those four walls, have some human interaction. And now you can choose flexibility when and where I want to work. Do I gotta work remote because I am stay at home and I take care of my kids? Well, I have that ability. I have that option. Do I need to scale back my hours? Well, I have that option. Like, geez, the Dutch, y'all just have so much options when it comes to work. It feels like.
Which is why the Netherlands has had the highest incidence of part-time employment in the developed world for years now. For context, according to World Bank data, in 2023, over 60% of Dutch employees worked part-time, compared to an average of 31% in the OECD and 36% in the EU. Part-time work is still far more common with women, but Dutch men are also still more likely than any of their international peers to work part-time. This is the main reason that, on average, the Dutch work such short weeks, with the latest Eurostat data finding that the average Dutch work week comes in at just 32 hours, the lowest in the EU by quite some distance, and well below the EU average of 36 hours. Of course, this number is brought down by all the part-time workers. It doesn't mean, for instance, that everyone is working 4 8-hour days, but as part-time work has become ever more popular in the Netherlands, 4-day weeks have indeed become very common. So, how's this working out for them? Well, to be honest, it looks like it's going pretty great. The Netherlands has a remarkably high employment rate. According to OECD data, 82% of working-age people in the Netherlands were in employment at the end of 2024, compared with 75% in the UK and 69% in France. Nor does this seem to have hurt the Dutch economy. The Netherlands is an incredibly rich country, measured by GDP per capita, largely because Dutch workers are quite literally some of the most productive in the world, which might have something to do with the fact that they're not as burnt out as the rest of us.
Exactly.
And finally, families seem to appreciate it. Dutch kids are quite literally the happiest in the world, presumably at least in part because they get to spend more time with their parents. Now, when you're diving into complicated topics such as this, it's quite easy to get caught up in what you know without even missing a beat. But what about the stories you don't see? Or what happens when the stories you do see are purposefully leaving out information to try and sway your thinking? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News,
To sponsor, but it honestly just kind of sounds perfect when you think about that part time, like how the Dutch do it. To me, it sounds perfect, like sitting here instead of one parent like going crazy working so many hours and the other parent being at home taking care of the house, taking care of the kids, getting stressed out, looking for human interaction, right? Needing a break. Well, how about you both just go down to part time? Still got money coming into the household, but one parent's having to work less and so they're not burning out, and another parent's getting to get out into the workforce and get that interaction and get out of those walls. And so it just feels like a win-win for employment status, because you're going to be able to hire more people instead of paying 2 full-time workers, right? I mean 3 part-time workers. And everybody's happy because they're happy. They don't want to be working full time, but they're still getting paid good enough to pay bills. And you feel me? And so that's, to me, it just kind of sounds amazing. And that's why your employment rate, I'm sure it has to be a factor why your employment rate is so high, because yeah, if everybody's part time, you're going to have to hire more people to cover more shifts. And that's to me, that's awesome, dog. Like 32-hour work week. Come on, the rest of the world catch up. Over here in the U.S., a 40-hour work week won't even pay the bills anymore. So that's a dream. That's all we have. If you guys enjoyed, don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up, check out the next. I'll see y'all next time.